The great hall of Nexus Prime stretched out like a golden dream. Light danced across walls made from crystal that cost more than entire planets. Ambassador Hyojin walked slowly across the polished floor, her black shoes clicking in the silence. Behind her came Taeho and Somin, both trying to look calm. 3 months. 3 long months of sitting in these fancy chairs and listening to aliens talk about humans like they were children. Hyojin kept her face blank as she sat down at the small table marked Earth Delegation. Around them, the real powers of the galaxy took their places at much bigger tables. The Valkyrie sat like kings on their floating thrones. Their leader, Velthara, had skin like pale gold and eyes that seemed to glow. She looked at the humans the way a teacher might look at slow students. Next to them, the Kethrin swarm made their clicking sounds. Their bug-like faces showed nothing, but Hyojin knew they were laughing inside. The Nexari were the strangest of all. They looked like walking crystals, flashing with different colors as they talked to each other in light patterns too fast for human eyes to follow. "We welcome our young friends from Earth," Velthara said, her voice smooth as honey. "Today we will discuss the final terms of your protection." Taeho's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. As the military advisor, he knew better than anyone what protection really meant. Somin shifted in her seat, her hands folded tight in her lap. She had spent years studying these species, learning their languages and customs. All that work, and they still treated her like a child playing at science. "The terms are simple," Velthara continued. "You will give us your warships. You will allow our teachers to guide your people. You will accept that some worlds are too dangerous for your kind to visit. In return, we will keep you safe from the dark things that hunt between the stars." The hall filled with the soft sounds of agreement, clicks from the Kethrin, light flashes from the Nexari, murmurs from a dozen other species who had come to watch. The humans surrender. Kethmor, the leader of the swarm, spoke next. His voice buzzed like angry insects. "Your species is too violent, too emotional. You fight each other over small things. How can we trust you with ships that could destroy worlds?" "The mathematics are clear," added the Nexari Prime Node. "It's crystal body flashing red and blue. Human behavioral patterns show a 97% chance of galactic conflict within 50 years if left unchecked. Supervision is not just recommended, it is required." Hyojin stood up slowly. The hall went quiet. "May I speak?" Velthara waved a graceful hand. "Of course, child. What wisdom do you bring from your young world?" "I've been listening for 3 months," Hyojin said, her voice steady. "I've heard you talk about our violence, our emotions, our dangerous nature, but I have a question." She looked around the hall, meeting alien eyes that had lived for centuries. "If we're so young and stupid, how did we figure out faster than light? Travel? How did we build ships that can cross the galaxy? How did we develop weapons that work just fine against your kind?" A few beings shifted uncomfortably. Velthara's smile became a little less warm. "Lucky accidents. Stumbling onto technology you don't understand. It happens sometimes with young species." "I see," Hyojin said. She touched a small device on her wrist. Far away in human space, Admiral Sungwoo received a coded signal, and our colonies? "The ones you say need protection?" "Scattered across dangerous space," Kethmor buzzed. "Easy targets for raiders and worse things. Our fleets watch over them now, for their own good," Hyojin nodded. 6,000 ships, your scouts tell us. Quite a protective force. "The galaxy is full of threats," Velthara said. "Pirates, Rogai, things that hide in dark space and hunt the unwary. Your people are not ready for such dangers." Somin finally spoke up. Her voice was quiet but clear. "What kind of things hide in dark space?" The hall went very still. Even the Nexari stopped flashing for a moment. Velthara's golden skin seemed to pale just a little. "Old things," she said carefully. "Ancient evils that civilized beings do not speak of. The less your people know, the safer they will be." Taeho leaned forward. "Civilized beings don't speak of them. But someone must fight them, right? Someone has to keep them away from the trade routes and colony worlds." No one answered. The silence stretched out like a held breath. Hyojin sat. Back down. We need time to discuss this with our government. 72 hours should be enough. Granted, Valthara said, looking relieved. Though I hope you will see reason. The alternative to our guidance is ... pleasant. The galaxy is not kind to species that refuse to learn their place. As the session ended, alien delegates filed out in small groups, talking quietly among themselves. Many looked pleased. The humans would have no choice but to agree. Their fleet was tiny compared to the forces surrounding human space. Their technology was primitive. Their people were scattered across dozens of worlds with no real defenses. Hyojin, Taeho, and Somin walked back to their small quarters in silence. Only when they were inside, with the privacy shields active, did they speak. They really believe it, Somin said, shaking her head. They think we're just lucky children who found some old technology. Taeho smiled for the first time in months. It was not a nice smile. Let them believe it. The Admiral's message came through an hour ago. Phase 1 is complete. And the other preparations? Hyojin asked. Ready and waiting, Taeho said. President Boaram sends her regards. And her authorization for Revelation Protocol. Somin opened her laptop and began typing. Data flowed across the screen. Star charts. Ship positions. Energy readings that would have surprised the aliens who thought they knew everything about human technology. They were right about one thing, she said softly. The galaxy is full of dangerous things. Ancient evils that hunt in dark space. She looked up, her eyes bright with something that might have been excitement. They just have no idea who's been hunting them back. Outside their window, the lights of Nexus Prime glittered like stars. A beautiful, peaceful world where the great powers of the galaxy came to make their deals and divide up the universe. Soon, those same powers would learn that not every species could be bought, threatened, or guided into submission. Some species had to be earned the right to speak as equals. And humanity was about to present their credentials. The countdown had begun. The Great Hall looked different on the final day. More beings had come to watch. Word had spread that the humans would finally accept their place in the galaxy. The viewing galleries were packed with diplomats, reporters, and curious aliens who wanted to see history being made. HYO-Jin walked to the center of the hall. Her steps echoed in the silence. Every eye in the room watched her. She carried a simple tablet in her hands, nothing fancy or threatening. Just a human woman with a message from Earth. Valthara sat on her floating throne, looking pleased. The golden light around her seemed brighter today, as if she was celebrating already. Kethmara's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. The Nexari flashed in happy patterns, their crystal bodies singing with harmonic frequencies. That made the air itself hum. Ambassador Hyojin, Valthara said, her voice warm with false kindness. I trust your people have seen wisdom in our offer? Hyojin stopped in the center of the hall. She looked up at the great dome above them, where the stars shone through. Crystal panels. Beautiful stars that humans had been visiting for longer than these beings knew. We have discussed your generous terms, she said clearly. The United Earth government has reached a decision. The hall went quiet. Even the background humming of the Nexari stopped. Thousands of alien beings leaned forward to hear humanity. Surrender, we respectfully decline. The words hit the hall like a bomb. For a moment, no one moved. Then the noise began. Clicking, buzzing, flashing, and sounds in languages that had no human names. Valthara's beautiful face twisted with anger. Impossible, she hissed. Your primitive minds cannot grasp the situation. You have no choice in this matter. Kethmar rose from his seat, his 6 legs making sharp sounds on the floor. Your pathetic fleet cannot stand against our combined might. We have 6,000 ships surrounding your colonies like a net. Your people will starve without trade. They will beg us to save them. The Nexari Prime node flashed angry red patterns. This emotional outburst confirms our assessment. Humans are too unstable for self-governance. Force will be required to ensure. Compliance, other voices joined in. Threats and insults in a dozen languages, promises of blockades and bombardments. The great powers of the galaxy showed their true faces when someone dared to say no. Yojin waited for the noise to die down. She seemed calm, almost peaceful, like someone who had been expecting this exact reaction. "Thank you," she said when the hall grew quiet again. "You've taught us everything we needed to know." Teho stepped forward from where he had been standing, with the other human advisors. His military uniform was simple compared to the fancy armor and robes around them, but something in his eyes made the nearest alien step back. "You've shown us who you really are," he said. "Under all the pretty words about guidance and protection, you're bullies who got used to smaller species doing what they're told." Velthara laughed, but it sounded forced. "Brave words from a species with barely 100 warships. Do you think your crude missiles and fusion drives can match technologies perfected over millennia?" "Let's find out," Hyojin said. She raised her tablet and spoke clearly into it. "Admiral Sungwoo, execute Revelation Protocol." The message went out instantly, carried by quantum communicators that worked faster than the aliens thought possible. Across human space, sleeping systems woke up, hidden protocols activated, and the galaxy began to see what humanity had really been doing for the past 50 years. On the main display screen in the hall, star charts began to change. Red dots appeared where there had been empty space before, hundreds of red dots. Then, thousands. "Sensor ghosts," Kethmore buzzed, but his voice sounded uncertain. "Some kind of trick?" The dots moved. They formed lines and patterns that spoke of organization and planning. They were coming from everywhere at once, from asteroid fields that had seemed empty, from gas clouds that should have hidden nothing, from dark space itself, not ghosts, Hyojin said quietly. "Ships." The first video feed came online. A Valkyrie patrol squadron, proud and confident in their advanced vessels, suddenly found themselves surrounded. Human ships materialized from what seemed like empty space. But these were not the crude, simple vessels the aliens had cataloged. When humanity first made contact, these ships were scarred and battle-worn. Their hulls showed the marks of weapons that the civilized galaxy had never seen. They moved with predatory grace like hunters who had been doing this for a very long time. "Impossible," Velthara whispered. "Our sensors would have detected. A fleet that size, our intelligence network spanned the galaxy." Somin stepped forward. Her voice was steady, but there was something new in her eyes. Something that made the alien xenobiologists who had once patronized her shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Your sensors look for the kind of technology you understand," she said. "Your intelligence networks watch the space lanes you use. But you never looked in the dark places, the spaces between stars where civilized beings don't go." More feeds came online. A Kethrim battle group found their perfect formations broken by human vessels that fought like pack hunters. The individual human ships were smaller, but they coordinated in ways that made no sense to alien tactics. They struck from unexpected angles and vanished before the counterattack could hit them. "This is a trick," the Nexari Prime node flashed. "Holograms, sensor phantoms. Humans lack the technology for true cloaking," Teho smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "You're right. We don't use cloaking technology. We use something better. We use camouflage." On the screens, human ships that had looked like mining platforms began to unfold. What the aliens had dismissed as simple industrial equipment revealed itself as weapon systems beyond their understanding. Stations they had ignored as research outposts opened like flowers, showing teeth. "You studied us," Hyojin said to the stunned hall. "You learned our languages. You cataloged our ships. You watched our colonies and counted our people. But you only saw what we wanted you to see." A new voice spoke from the screens. Admiral Sungwoo appeared standing on the bridge of a ship that dwarfed anything the aliens had in their files. Behind him, the bridge crew worked with the smooth efficiency of professionals who had done this many times before. "Greetings, Galactic Council," the Admiral said politely. "I am Admiral Sungwoo of the United Earth Navy. I believe you wanted to discuss terms?" Velthara found her voice. What is this? What are those ships? Where did they come from? The same place we've always been, Sungwoo replied. The dark spaces between your trade routes. The systems you marked as too dangerous to explore. The regions where civilized beings don't go because they're afraid of what they might find. The hall erupted in panic. Delegates from 100 worlds began demanding explanations. How had humanity hidden so much? How long had those ships been out there? What else didn't they know about the species they had thought they understood? Hyojin raised her hand for silence. Slowly, the noise died down. All eyes turned back to her. You offered to teach us about the dangers of the galaxy, she said. About the ancient evils that hunt in dark space. About things too terrible for young species to understand. She paused, looking around the hall at faces that had gone from smug to terrified. You were right about one thing. There are terrible things out there in the dark. Ancient evils that would drive most species mad just from seeing them. Her smile was gentle, almost kind. We know. We've been fighting them for longer than your civilization has existed. The silence in the hall was complete now. Not even the sound of breathing could be heard. The peace talks haven't failed, Hyojin said softly. They've served their purpose perfectly. We needed to know who you really were, whether you could be trusted, whether you saw us as equals or as prey. She gestured to the screen showing alien fleets being systematically dismantled by ships that shouldn't exist. Now we know. Admiral Sungwoo stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable and watched his enemy die. The Valkyrie battlecruiser had been beautiful once, all flowing lines and golden armor. Now it spun helplessly through space, its engines dark and its weapons silent. Target neutralized, sir, reported Captain Minho from the weapons station. Shall we move to assist the Shadowhawk? Negative, Sungwoo said calmly. Captain the Jun can handle 3 cruisers by himself. Signal the fleet. Begin Phase 2. Around them, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. Lieutenant H.R. coordinated with the other human fleets scattered across the galaxy. Commander Dalsu monitored alien communications, listening to the growing panic in their voices. These people had trained for this moment their entire careers. The Indomitable itself was a work of art that no alien had ever imagined. From the outside, it looked like a human dreadnought, bigger than anything Earth was supposed to be able to build. But that was just the beginning. Its hull bore scars from weapons that the civilized galaxy had never seen. Its armor had been tested against things that hunted between dimensions. Its crew had fought in battles that would have broken the minds of most species. Sir, I called out. We're receiving broadcasts from the Nexus Prime Conference Hall. Ambassador Hyojin is addressing the Galactic Council. Put it on screen, Sungwoo ordered. Hyojin's image appeared on the main display. She stood in the center of that golden hall, surrounded by alien beings who had gone from arrogant to terrified. In the space of an hour, her voice was calm and clear as she spoke. You assumed we were children playing with toys we didn't understand. You were wrong about the toys and very wrong about us. Sungwoo smiled. Hyojin had always been good with words. Even as a child on Mars Colony, she had been able to make adults listen when she spoke. Now she was speaking to the entire galaxy, and they were finally hearing her. On the tactical display, reports continued to flow in from across human space. The alien blockade, so confident just hours ago, was falling apart. Ships that had expected easy victories against primitive humans found themselves facing something they had never encountered before. The Kethran swarm had always relied on overwhelming numbers and perfect coordination. Their battle computers calculated every move with mathematical precision. But human tactics didn't follow their equations. Captain the Qian's squadron struck like wolves, appearing from nowhere and vanishing before the counterattack could form. The swarm's rigid formations crumbled as their ships tried to adapt to an enemy that refused to fight fair. Status report. From Battle Group 7, Minho announced. Admiral Jinne reports successful breakthrough over the Nexari defensive line. Enemy fleet is in full retreat. The Nexari had been the most confident of all. Their crystalline ships were things of beauty, flashing with inner light as they moved through space. Their weapons could carve through solid matter at the molecular level. Their shields could turn aside any energy weapon the galaxy had ever produced, but they had never faced human weapons before. Weapons designed to fight things that lived in dark space and laughed at molecular bonds. The Nexery's perfect formations shattered like glass against tactics that had been learned in battles against enemies that existed partially outside normal space. "Sir," Dalsu called out urgently, "I'm detecting massive energy buildup from the Valkyrie home fleet. It looks like they're preparing to use their planet killers." Sung-woo nodded. He had expected this. When cornered, most species reverted to their most brutal tactics. The Valkyrie planet killers were weapons of terror, designed to crack worlds and boil away atmospheres. They had used them before against species that couldn't fight back. "Signal Admiral B.O. Young," he ordered. "Authorize Dark Protocol." Across the galaxy, human ships received the new orders. Weapon systems that had remained hidden even from their own crews came online. The real arsenal of humanity began to reveal itself. The first planet killer died before it could fire. One moment it was there, a massive dreadnought bristling with world-ending weapons. The next moment, it simply wasn't. No explosion, no debris field. It had been removed from reality as cleanly as deleting a file from a computer. "How?" the Valkyrie admiral gasped over the open channel. "What weapon can do that? The kind you learn to build when you hunt things that eat stars?" Sung-woo replied calmly. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Dr. So-min's voice came through. From Nexus Prime, she was addressing the xenobiologists who had once treated her like a child playing at science. "You studied our primitive emotional responses like we were interesting animals in a zoo," she said. Her voice carried across the quantum communicators to every human ship in the fleet. "You wrote papers about human aggression and our dangerous inability to control our feelings. But emotions aren't weaknesses, they're motivators." Sung-woo remembered So-min as a young graduate student, eager to study alien life and learn about the galaxy. She had been so excited when first contact was made. So hopeful that humanity would find friends among the stars, the aliens had crushed that hope with their condescending attitudes and their assumption that humans were just clever animals. They had turned her dreams of peaceful cooperation into something harder and more dangerous. "You motivated us very well," So-min continued. "Every patronizing comment. Every assumption that we were too primitive to understand. Every time you treated us like children who needed guidance. You taught us exactly what you thought of us." More reports flooded in. The alien fleets weren't just losing. They were being systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed to know their every weakness. Human ships fought with a coordination that shouldn't have been possible. They struck at points that alien tactical computers said were impossible to hit. They used weapons that violated the known laws of physics. "Sir, said quietly, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 different fleets." "Denied," Sung-woo said without hesitation. "They wanted to see what humans could do when pushed." "Let them see." The bridge crew continued their work. These were people who had grown up knowing the truth about humanity's place in the galaxy. They had trained from childhood to fight enemies that most species couldn't even imagine. They had learned tactics from veterans who had battled things that existed before stars were born on the main screen. Hyojin's voice continued to ring out across the galaxy. "While you squabbled over territory and trade routes, we explored dark space. We found things you never looked for because you were too civilized to imagine them. Ancient horrors that your ancestors learned to fear and then forgot about. We didn't forget, we hunted them." Sung-woo thought about his own childhood on Europa Station. The way the adults would sometimes go quiet when certain star charts were displayed. The way certain sectors were marked as navigation hazards with no explanation given. He had learned the truth when he joined the Navy and took his first assignment beyond the outer rim. There were things out there that hunted civilizations for sport. Creatures that fed on the dreams of entire species. Entities that could twist reality itself into weapons. The civilized galaxy had built their perfect societies by ignoring these threats and hoping they would stay in the dark spaces where they belonged. Humanity had never had that luxury. From their first steps into deep space, they had encountered the things that the galaxy preferred not to think about. They had learned to fight them, to hunt them, and sometimes to make deals with the ones that could be reasoned with. Final enemy. Resistance is collapsing, Minho reported. Goal primary objective secured. Sungwoo nodded and opened a channel to Nexus Prime. Ambassador Hyojin, he said formally. Admiral Sungwoo reporting, the galaxy is secure, your orders? Through the quantum link, he could see her standing in that hall full of terrified aliens. Her smile was gentle, almost sad. Begin Phase 3. Admiral, it's time they learned what we've really been protecting them from. Captain the Jun watched the Valthyri Imperial fleet through the scarred viewport of the UES Shadowhawk. For 800 years, these golden ships had been the terror of 3 sectors. They had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved entire species. Now they ran through space like frightened children, their perfect formations broken, and their weapons silent. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported Lieutenant Sujin from the sensor station. Imperial battle cruiser trying to reach the hyperspace limit. Let it run, Dejun said calmly. We're not hunting stragglers today. His ship was small compared to the massive alien vessels around them. The Shadowhawk was a hunter-killer, built for speed and stealth rather than raw firepower. Its hull was covered in scars from battles that the civilized galaxy had never heard of. Weapon burns from energy types that didn't exist in any database. Impact craters from projectiles that had been fired by things that technically shouldn't be able to exist. The crew of the Shadowhawk had all grown up on the rim worlds, the colonies that existed at the edge of human space where the dark things sometimes came calling. They knew what it meant to fight enemies that could reshape reality with a thought. They had learned to be hunters because the alternative was extinction. Captain, called out Ensign Junho from communications. Fleet Admiral Jin'e is requesting status update. Tell the Admiral we're ahead of schedule, Dejun replied. The Imperial fleet was supposed to be their best. If this is what they call elite, we'll be done by dinner. Through the quantum link, reports flowed in from across the galaxy. Admiral. Jin'e commanded the First Fleet from her flagship, coordinating the systematic dismantling of every alien force that had dared to threaten human colonies. Her voice was calm and professional as she gave orders that were reshaping the balance of power in known space. Battle Group Alpha, move to secure the Centauri trade routes. Battle Group Beta, I want those Nexari crystal ships intact if possible. Their technology might be useful for the next phase. Jin'e had been fighting in dark space since she was 20 years old. She had commanded ships in battles against entities that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Compared to that, conventional warfare against 3-dimensional opponents was almost relaxingly simple. The Nexari Collective had thought their crystalline perfection made them untouchable. The ships were mathematical marvels, every angle calculated for maximum efficiency. Their weapons operated on principles that most species couldn't even comprehend. Their defense matrices were supposedly flawless, but perfection was brittle. When faced with tactics that refused to follow mathematical models, their crystal formations shattered like glass in a hurricane. Human ships didn't fight with calculated precision. They fought with intuition, adaptability, and the kind of creative chaos that came from generations of battling incomprehensible horrors, Sujin reported. Long-range sensors are detecting movement in the Kepler Nebula. Looks like a Kethran. Reserve fleet trying to flank us. The Jun smiled. The Kethran swarm was famous for their tactical brilliance. Their Queen mines could coordinate thousands of ships with perfect efficiency. They had never lost a major battle because they never made mistakes. Signal Squadron 7, he ordered. Tell Commander Yunwoo to demonstrate the Wraith pattern. The Wraith pattern was something human tacticians had developed while fighting the Void Dancers, entities that existed partially outside normal spacetime. It required ships to move in ways that technically violated several laws of physics, but it worked against enemies that thought in purely 3-dimensional terms. the Kethran Reserve Fleet found, itself surrounded by human vessels that seemed to appear and disappear at random. Their perfect coordination became a liability as they tried to track targets that refused to stay in one dimension long enough to be hit. Meanwhile, on the surface of contested worlds, General Dongjun was demonstrating why alien analysts had been so wrong about human ground forces. They had studied human military history and concluded that humans were dangerously aggressive but ultimately predictable. They had cataloged human weapons and armor and found them crude. Compared to alien technology, they had missed the point entirely. Human soldiers didn't win because they had better equipment. They won because they had been fighting impossible odds. Since their species first picked up sticks and stones, every human world had stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things when faced with overwhelming force. It was bred into their bones. "Status report from the surface," came General Dongshun's voice over the command channel. "The Valkyrie ground forces have surrendered. Turns out their powered armor doesn't help much when your opponent refuses to fight fair." The Jun could imagine it. Alien soldiers trained in honorable combat, facing human veterans who had learned their trade-fighting nightmare creatures in the dark spaces between stars. There was no honor in fighting something that wanted to eat your soul. There was only survival, and humans had gotten very good at surviving. The reports continued to pour in. Admiral B.O. Young had engaged the main Nexari battle fleet near the galactic core. Captain Haewon was leading a strike force against Kethran supply lines. Commander Insu had captured an entire Valkyrie fortress world without firing a shot. The garrison had surrendered the moment they realized what they were facing. "Captain," Jun-Ho called out urgently, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Nexus Prime. Ambassador Hyojin wants to speak to all fleet commanders." The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of the Galactic Council chambers, but it looked different now. The golden halls that had once seemed so magnificent now looked like what they really were, a cage built by predators to impress their prey. HYO-Jin stood in the center of the hall, but she was no longer alone. Alien beings knelt around her, their proud heads bowed in submission. Velthara, who had seemed so regal and untouchable just hours ago, now looked like what she had always been under the beautiful facade, bully who had finally met someone stronger. "Fleet commanders," Hyojin said, her voice carrying clearly across the quantum links, "you've done excellent work. The galaxy now understands that we are not the helpless children they thought we were, but our mission is not complete." She gestured to the cowering aliens around her. "These beings offered to protect us from the dangers of dark space. They spoke of ancient evils and terrible threats that young species couldn't handle. They were right about the threats. They were just wrong about who was handling them." The Jin felt a familiar chill. He had been hoping they wouldn't need to reveal that part of humanity's secret. The galaxy was already terrified enough. "Phase 3 is now authorized," Hyojin continued. "Show them what we've been protecting them from. Show them why the monsters stay in the dark." Across the galaxy, human ships began to power up systems that had remained hidden even from their own crews. Sensors that could track things that didn't exist in normal space. Weapons designed to kill entities that fed on entire star systems. Communication arrays that could reach into dimensions where the laws of physics were more like gentle suggestions. The first contact came within minutes. Something vast and hungry stirred in the space between galaxies, drawn by the psychic screams of the alien fleets. It had been sleeping in dark space for millennia, waiting for the right moment to feed again. "Contact," Sujin reported, her voice tight with familiar fear. "Range approximately outside normal space. It's big, sir, really big. Classification?" The Jin asked, though he already knew. "Star Eater class. Possibly a Harvester variant." Around the galaxy, alien sensors began detecting something that shouldn't exist. Something that had been drawn by the chaos of battle and the scent of fear. The kind of ancient horror that civilized species had learned to pretend didn't exist. "All fleets," came Admiral Sunwoo's voice over the command channel. "This is what we do. This is who we are. Time to go to work." The human fleets turned away from their defeated enemies and moved toward something infinitely more dangerous. Behind them, alien crews watched in growing horror as they realized the truth. Humanity hadn't been hiding from the monsters in dark space. They had been keeping the monsters away from everyone else. 6 months had passed since the peace talks collapsed. The Great Hall of Nexus Prime looked different now. Half the seats were empty. Some species had chosen exile over submission, while others had simply vanished when they continued their hostilities against humanity. Those who remained sat quietly, their proud heads bowed. Ambassador Hyojin walked across the same polished floor where she had once been treated like a child, but the sound of her footsteps was different now. There was no clicking of alien claws or buzzing of insect wings to compete with. The hall was respectfully quiet. President Bioram's image appeared via hologram above the center of the hall. She was an older woman with kind eyes, but those who looked closely could see the steel beneath. She had been elected after first contact, when humanity realized they would need someone who could smile while making the hard decisions. Citizens of the galaxy, Bioram began, her voice carrying to every world that still had functioning communication systems. 6 months ago, your leaders offered us guidance. They said we were too young, too violent, too emotional to be trusted with advanced technology. They offered to protect us from the dangers of the galaxy. The remaining alien delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Velthara was still there, but her golden skin had lost its luster. She looked older now, as if the weight of understanding had aged her. Beside her, Kethmar's mandibles clicked nervously. The Nexari representatives flashed in muted colors, their once bright crystal forms dimmed with defeat. They were half right, Bioram continued. We were playing. The ships you catalogued, the colonies you thought you were protecting, the simple fusion drives and particle weapons we showed you, that was us playing. Would you like to see us when we're serious? Above the hall, holographic displays showed images that made the remaining aliens flinch. Human ships emerging from dark space, their hulls scarred by battles against things that shouldn't exist. Weapons that could delete matter from reality. Soldiers who fought creatures that existed in 17 dimensions at once. Dr. So-min stood up from the human delegation table. She had been quiet during these past months, working with the scientists and scholars who were slowly learning the truth about their galaxy. Now she addressed the beings who had once dismissed her research. You studied us for decades before making contact, she said, her voice clear and calm. You learned our languages, catalogued our weapons, analyzed our social structures. You thought you understood us completely. She activated a small device and new images appeared in the air. Star charts that showed human activity going back centuries, not decades. Colony worlds and regions marked as impossible to survive on every galactic map. Trade routes that passed through areas where reality itself was unstable. But you only looked at what we wanted you to see. You studied the facade we built for you, not the reality beneath it. Humanity's recent discovery of faster-than-light travel wasn't our first time among the stars. We've been out here for 300 years, fighting wars you never knew existed. The silence in the hall was complete now. Even the background hum of the air recycling system seemed too loud. Admiral Sungwoo appeared on another hologram, standing on the bridge of a ship that dwarfed anything in the known galaxy. Behind him, star charts showed the true extent of human space, not the small cluster of colonies the aliens had thought they were protecting, but a vast network that stretched into regions where civilized beings feared to go. You offered to be our shepherds, he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority earned through countless battles. You wanted to guide us, teach us, protect us from the dangerous galaxy. But you made one critical error in your assessment. He gestured to the star charts behind him, showing the dark spaces where ancient horrors made their lairs. We're not the sheep in this scenario, we never were. The revelation continued to unfold like a flower blooming in reverse, each layer peeling, a way to reveal something darker and more dangerous beneath. Humanity's primitive emotions weren't weaknesses, they were survival traits. developed over centuries of fighting enemies that could drive most species insane with a glance. Their crude military tactics were refined through battles against opponents that could reshape reality itself. The young human civilization was actually older than most galactic powers, having learned to spread across dark space while other species were still building their first starships. They had encountered the ancient evils that the civilized galaxy preferred to pretend didn't exist, and they had learned to hunt them. The most dangerous predator, so Min explained to the xenobiologists who had once patronized her, is the one that lets you think you're safe. We spent 50 years letting you believe we were harmless newcomers who needed your guidance. All that time, we were evaluating you, deciding whether you could be trusted, whether you saw us as equals or as prey. The final truth was the hardest one for the galaxy to accept. Humanity hadn't been hiding from the monsters that lurked in dark space. They had been keeping those monsters away from everyone else. The civilized species had built their perfect societies by ignoring the threats that existed beyond their well-traveled space lanes. They had created art and philosophy and science while deliberately not thinking about the things that hunted in the spaces between stars. They had been able to do this because someone else was fighting those battles for them. Every time you dismissed us as too primitive to understand the galaxy's dangers, Hyojin said quietly, we were returning from missions to keep those dangers away from your worlds. Every time you spoke about our violent nature, our people were dying to protect yours. Every condescending comment about our emotional instability came while our soldiers were fighting nightmares that would break your minds. President Bo Ram's image grew larger, filling the dome above them. The galaxy has a new reality to accept, she said with the calm certainty of someone stating simple facts. Humanity isn't the newcomer learning the rules. We're the old guards who decided to give civilization a chance. These peace talks proved that chance was wasted. The surviving alien powers were given a choice. They could accept humanity's true place in the galactic order and contribute to the defense against the dark space threats they had been ignoring. Or they could join the species that had already learned what happened to those who continued to view humans as prey. Most chose cooperation. The alternative had been demonstrated quite thoroughly. Velthara was among the first to formally surrender. The proud Valtheri Empire that had once commanded respect across 3 sectors now existed at humanity's sufferance. She had watched her fleets be dismantled by ships that appeared from nowhere. She had seen her perfect soldiers surrender rather than face human ground forces. She had learned what it meant to be prey. We accept the new order, she said, her once melodious voice now barely a whisper. But please, help us understand. Why? Why did you let us believe we were your superiors? Why endure our condescension when you could have revealed your strength at any time? Hyojin looked at her with something that might have been pity. Because we hoped you might be better than you were. Because we wanted allies, not subjects. Because we believed that given enough time, you might learn to see us as equals rather than primitives to be guided. She gestured to the empty seats around the hall where other species had once sat in judgment of humanity. We were wrong. The final image that filled the great dome was a view of deep space, where human ships patrolled the boundaries between the civilized galaxy and the dark regions beyond. Ancient things moved in those shadows, kept at bay by warriors who had been fighting them for longer than most species had existed. The galaxy's new reality is simple, Ram concluded. You're not our shepherds, teachers, or guides. You're the ones we've been protecting, and now you know it. As the session ended and the remaining aliens filed out in silence, Hyojin remained in the center of the hall. The great dome above showed the stars' beautiful, distant lights that hid so much darkness between them. Te-Ho and So-Min joined her, looking up at the same view. Do you think any of them will actually learn? So-Min asked. Some might, Hyojin replied. The smart ones will realize that being protected is better than being conquered. The rest, she shrugged. The rest will learn what their predecessors learned about challenging apex predators. Outside the hall, human ships continued their patrols in the dark spaces where civilization feared to look. The galaxy had a new order now, built on the foundation of a truth that could no longer be hidden. Humanity wasn't the student in this relationship. They were the teachers, and class was now in session.